Hello, political candidates. Your campaign's website domain is an important factor in your website's SEO. It's crucial for your campaign website to include your first and last name. It gives AI models like ChatGPT an authoritative source of truth to pull from, helping to prevent the AI from hallucinating or picking up outdated information from third-party blogs or partisan attacks. So visit name.com today and buy your personalized .vote website address. Let AI be your friend. Your potential voters will thank you.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com. To run a successful business, you need one thing: customers. And how do you get customers? You get them through advertising. You get them through lead generation. But what happens if the leads don't exist or they don't have valid contact information? This is a familiar story all businesses deal with. Then they call these leads who don't exist, or they're bad numbers, or they're not in their service area. Argus 101 verifies every lead before your team picks up the phone. It's a real person in your area and a neighborhood that matches your ideal customer. Your team only calls people worth calling, thus saving you money. Free trial at argus101.com. That's ARGUS101.com. Help your business expand today. Go to argus101.com. ARGUS101.com.
Welcome to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Sam Stone. Chuck Warren out of the studio today, and as it so happens, and happens to us once in a while, we had a brilliant guest lined up for these first couple of segments. They had a conflict pop up the last minute, so we've got Brennan in studio with me here, and we are just going to wing it for you, folks. But fortunately, there is a ton of material out there, and specifically, I want to get into the testimony, the hearing with Anthony Fauci. Take us back to 2020. Because I was pretty early on this, looking at the data. So going back at that time, right, when this first started coming out, there were kind of conflicting data points. I always look for hard evidence, right? Mm-hmm. And then double check and back check. Mm-hmm. So first, if we go back, the Costa Concordia, the cruise ship that was out there with infected people on it. And they're like, okay, no one wants to let this cruise ship land. This disease is so deadly. It's, at that time they were saying up to 20% fatalities. Okay, but the Costa Concordia didn't have any deaths.
So where's that 20% coming from?
Right, so this is a cruise ship. It's the worst environment possible for a virus, right? Well, it's the best environment for the virus. It's the worst environment for humans to be in with a virus. Yeah, because you're locked in with it. There's no escape. And it was fine, right? People got sick, then they recovered. Then they had Italy, northern Italy. They brought up, there was all over the news these photos of overcrowded hospitals and people dead in the hallways in northern Italy. So I did a little research. Mm-hmm. And I went and said, what happens in flu season in northern Italy at this time of year every year, right? Yeah. So this is back in December 2020, December 2019 into January 2020. What happens in Italy is really straightforward. They have a socialized medical system that hasn't invested in new hospitals in 50 years.
Oh, gosh.
And it gets overrun every flu season. So what was happening it might have been a bad flu season, but it wasn't that abnormal. Again, the data didn't match what they were saying. The news is coming out like everyone is dying.
Sam, are you telling me the news twisted a story?
Well, so yeah, obviously that's no surprise, right?
Typical.
And there's a lot there's a lot of layers to this onion, right? So we had the testimony of Fauci this week, or non-testimony, where he's just pleading the fifth over and over and over, which, by the way, it'll be interesting to see if anything comes of that, because you can't plead the fifth for things that you have been pardoned for.
Yeah.
Being pardoned's a lot like a plea deal where you allocute to everything you've done, and if you don't allocute to the things you've done, you're still in jeopardy for those things. With a pardon, if you won't talk about the things that you did, you now become in legal jeopardy. So I'm hoping that there will be some consequences for Anthony Fauci. But, going back, I want to go back. So take us back to where you were in the spring, January, February, March of 2020.
So funny enough, when COVID first initially started and we saw people wearing masks and everybody was kind of like, what's going on? Oh, this is a joke. More people are wearing masks. I was actually at ASU my first year, and it was towards the end of it, and everything was moved online. All the classes, dorm rooms were emptied.
So that was your freshman year at ASU.
And then I ended up going to California. And I ended up getting a management position at Jersey Mike's. And
now you left school after that. Mm-hmm. Was that a part of the reason? You kind of had school taken away from you?
A little bit, yeah. It felt like, in a way, one, I wasn't getting the education that I was paying for. I was doing it online.
Right. Really ineffectively.
Yeah, and it felt like it was a fever dream. I mean, people are wearing masks. The school's shutting down. My sister was supposed to graduate that year and couldn't even have her graduation. And
so she couldn't walk at graduation. She got a piece of paper.
She got a piece of paper and was on the slideshow that everybody could watch at home. And then fast forward, when it just started getting worse and worse, I ended up going out into California July of 2020. Yeah, 2020. And that's when it got bad. I was working at Jersey Mike's, and that's when they started pushing the vaccination. And might I add, I did not get COVID at all until I got that vaccination. I had never felt that sick in my life, but we had to get the vaccinations, and then they were trying to push the boosters, and pretty much with the vaccinations, they were telling us, well, you're not going to be employed. You're not going to be allowed to get your groceries or going anywhere if you don't have this card to prove that you've been vaccinated and are safe.
And California was really draconian about that. I mean, we have the sort of famous video of the lone surfer, right?
Yeah.
But from your personal experience, I mean, the state actually came down on all these restaurants.
Yeah. We had a health department person come in, and they were checking our vax cards, making sure everybody was vaccinated. And luckily, they didn't do that with the boosters, but they were trying.
They can't check ID at the polls, but they can check your vax card at the restaurant.
You don't need your identification, but if you want to go eat at McDonald's or wherever, we got to see your vaccination card.
And so it was actually where you couldn't go in these restaurants if you didn't show your card.
Yeah, anywhere. You couldn't go anywhere, especially without a mask either. I remember visiting Arizona, coming from California after being there for the first year, and I was baffled about the leniency with masks here, and it was so nice. You wear it with free will.
Yeah.
And
well,
there they wouldn't. You can't get anywhere without it.
Now, did you know at that time that being young and healthy, you were at essentially zero risk from the disease?
No, because the way it was advertised, it was pushed as though it's killing everybody.
So you and your friends, the people your age, were you had to be concerned because what you were being told was this is deadly to you too.
Yeah.
And so now we know. And actually, we knew at the time. Again, I keep digging at the data. One of the interesting data points from that period was Africa, right, had basically no deaths. Well, Africa's population average is literally 19 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
So because of disease and war and all that kind of thing, it is an incredibly young population where you do have some older folks, but they tend to. There's not that many that make it. It's a little bit like. Europe in prehistory, essentially.
Yeah.
So there were no deaths, right? And then the mask thing, I remember, again, always look at the facts, right? Like surgical masks were never designed to stop viruses. They're designed to stop spit from going from the surgeon into the wound of a patient when they're performing surgery, or to prevent blood from going in the surgeon's mouth, right?
Exactly.
Like it's meant to stop particulate matter, not airborne viruses.
That's kind of funny to think about, because like you look at it in a perspective of like, okay, so we started wearing surgical masks even though it's like it's been proven to be used for surgeons for that purpose. That's like me walking around with a hard hat on and being like, ah.
And you want to know if you backtrack to where that came from? So, because I remember at the time seeing the news pieces start, you can always kind of see the trail, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, like, when I knew we were going to have a big shutdown and all that kind of thing, and I actually I was working in Sal Cicio's offices as chief of staff at the city of Phoenix. I wrote a big piece for him to put out that said, like, people just be calm. There's going to be all these disruptions. They're going to shut down schools. They're going to do all this stuff. The reason I knew was because I was seeing photos coming out of Wuhan with workers in, like, biohazard suits cleaning the streets, right?
Yeah.
And so you knew there was about to be a government overreaction.
Yeah.
I mean, that was absolutely on the way.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
But the masks, again, you can usually see, they started running stories about how the death rate in Japan was essentially non-existent, right? And so then they're like, well, look at all these Japanese people who wear masks on the subway, and they wear masks when they're sick. And that's where, I mean, you could literally see it, and then it got into the media circles, and then all of a sudden Fauci saying, well, masks are a good idea, even though 2 weeks earlier he'd been saying they do nothing. And I remember at the time saying, again, we're not looking at the right demographic data. What is the major difference in terms of health outcomes between Japan and the United States? It's obesity.
I was just about to say diet.
Diet
alone.
and physical fitness, which is the great barrier against COVID. If you were healthy and under 60 or 70, you're essentially at zero risk. And there's a secondary one, which we didn't understand at that time, and I've laughed about it since. It turns out that one group had almost no deaths, no matter their health condition previously or their race or genetics. There was nothing that mattered except this one thing.
What?
Smoking.
Oh, there you go.
Smokers had no deaths from COVID, essentially.
Really?
Yeah. So literally the scientists were thinking this was going to be the cohort that like went down en masse. Like every smoker is about to die because it's a lung.
Coming.
And it turns out nicotine blocks the replication of the spike protein.
This is like the one time nicotine's ever
literally
benefited anybody.
nicotine for the first time in history after years of false advertising labels. Literally, you wouldn't remember obviously, but like literally when I remember being in the 70s. Now I was like 5'6", but I remember billboards like, have a cigarette after dinner for your digestion.
Yeah.
Like, it was a health item.
Didn't they have, like, posters at doctors' offices, too?
Yeah.
Saying,
no,
like,
I mean, that's like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, but it's still stuck around. Now, COVID ran around, and that was literally the first time in history that smokers were doing something positive for their health.
I hope the smokers feel a little bit better about themselves.
I mean, yeah, so, but the point of that was, like, the other part, what we just saw with the testimony and in Fauci's diary and the notes, people keep calling it diary. It's not really a diary. This was a log for his work where he was keeping a journal for work, essentially tracking what he was doing. It turns out to sound like a diary because the guy's ego is just so stupidly out of control. Right, but
action figure thing too.
Oh my goodness,
that made me cringe.
He's just it's vile, and we only got a minute left, and then we're going to get to Bee's Corner in this next segment. We got some great guests coming up here at the end of the program, so you don't want to miss out on that, folks. The other thing from this that we learned from Fauci's diary, he knew that the ivermectin triple cocktail worked, and they told everyone no. And they did it because telling people no allowed the vaccine to get the emergency use authorization that it needed for that. Folks, that killed people because the vaccine was ineffective. Even Fauci had a heart attack after it. So, yeah, that came out too. He had a heart attack right after getting the vaccine. Folks, this story needs to be spread. I've talked to a lot of my liberal friends. They're not even seeing this online.
No.
This isn't being covered on the news. It's nowhere. So talk to your friends about this. Share this stuff about Fauci and what's going on. This is a big deal. Breaking Battlegrounds coming right back. All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're going to be heading into B's Corner here in just a moment. But before we get started, please help us grow Breaking Battlegrounds by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can find the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Breaking Battlegrounds is there. We've got more clips and updates. Also follow us on social media. If you're not, you're missing tons of amazing content. And now, do we have music? Is it?
Mystery, secrets untold. The truth gets set free when B gets a hold. Crimes where killers roam off free, or even ones where they get caught at the scene. From cold case files to headline news, she's breaking it all down just for you. So come take a seat, don't miss a beat. B's Crime Corners where the stories go deep.
All right, B, do we have a story? Here's my question. Is today's story about something more deadly than COVID?
No.
Oh.
Thankfully, no.
Yeah, but most of your stories actually are more deadly than COVID.
They usually are. But this one is an ongoing one that could have been deadly, but thank God it was not. Yeah, this one's going to irk you, though, a little bit. It's going to give your tummy a little flip, especially if you're a parent and you have any ounce of love in your body. So, the Ohio House of Horrors. Have you heard anything about this?
No.
Oh my gosh. So this recently just happened. Actually, we'll start here.
Wait, so House of Horrors, is this one of those like theme things or is this just the name that's been given to this?
It's been the name that's been given to it, but it fits. It fits. It's like a haunted house.
But this is not like an official business haunted house. Okay.
No. Could be.
Can be in the future.
Definitely
opportunity for entrepreneurism.
Right? Okay, so June 30th, 2026, investigators searched a home in Hamden, Ohio. They came to this home because the man, Gary Siders, was under investigation for the previous month in May for having 4 encounters where he flashed his private parts. So he had 4 indecent exposure counts. So the police were already on him, right? And they go to this house June 30th, 2026. Investigators search the home, and what they find is gut-wrenching. They found 16 children living in what authorities call deplorable conditions. And might I note that the attorney general and that the sheriff that were at this house said that they had seen livestock live in better conditions than this. Covered in feces, covered in bugs, a 12 by 12 room with 16 children living in it that have never seen outside.
Wait, where did they've never been outside the...
Majority of them had never been outside. The oldest...
16 in a 12 by 12, like...
1,300 square foot home, only 5 bedrooms, and they were confined to this one room.
They can't lay down at the same time.
No, they actually ran a social experiment, too, to show, the spacing of this, and half the people in the experiment cried. Because they were mothers and fathers, but they were also people that were just feeling what these children had to deal with in a 12 by 12 room, but covered in feces.
Where did these kids come from? Are they his kids?
Yeah, so I think this story goes deep and there's so much information we don't know yet and there's so many theories. First things first, let me clear the air because a lot of talk has been about, was it sex trafficking? Was it a trafficking ring? No, it was not.
Okay.
But I believe the way the situation started might have had some type of weird dynamic. The mother, Elizabeth Siders, she married Gary Siders Jr. when she was 15. They had to get the marriage signed off by a judge in Ohio, and he did. So they were married at 15. She ended up having a baby, the first baby, 2 months after their marriage at 15. Gary's now 36, and she's only 33, but he was 18 at the time.
Okay.
And so they had this baby. This was their firstborn, who's about 18 years old now. These children range from 18 months to 18 years old. And this girl can't even spell her own name.
At 18?
And most of them can't even form sentences.
Well, yeah, of course.
And so I watched this YouTube channel a long time ago. If you guys haven't seen it, I definitely recommend seeing it. It gives you a very, very realistic perspective on the world and what the dark parts of it are. It's called Soft White Underbelly. And this guy goes around and he interviews people, whether they're prostitutes, pimps, drug dealers, just people from Skid Row. He even went and visited this family that's on the Appalachian Mountains, and they were an inbred family. And if you look at the pictures, I'll post it with the video on social media, but if you look at the pictures of them, it's giving off that kind of vibe. I don't know how to say this nicely. It's giving the inbred energy off. And it was the two grandparents that were Gary's parents that were also looking after these kids, these 4 adults, Elizabeth, Gary Jr., Gary Sr., and Christina, the grandma. And they all 4 were supposed to be taking care of these kids. And just if you look at the mugshots of them, they just look drugged out. And there hasn't been any notes or anything released about like drugs or their history, but the way the relationship started with Elizabeth and Gary Jr., I think that is a major red flag if there's something deeper in this story, because having that many kids from 15 to 30, like, it's insane. And the neglect,
there's a whole bunch of parts of this that
it makes your stomach unsettled. And these kids had no doctor's appointments. Their neighbors that live around them said they didn't even know they had kids. Like, if you have a couple kids, 2 kids, 1 kid, and people don't know you have a kid, okay, not a big deal. Like, people can not be very observant.
Honestly, that's still weird.
But 16 kids, and nobody knew these 4 had any kids in that house. Wow. Especially with the size of it. And so 2 of these kids were airlifted out. The sheriff said that if they had waited 24 more hours, these kids would have been dead. Some of these kids would have died. So they airlifted 2 out.
I mean, I'm surprised that some haven't died along the way, which brings up another question.
Yeah, there were 2 that she birthed that ended up having a miscarriage with, but like post-birth, I believe. And
that's not what we call a miscarriage generally.
No, exactly. And she, I guess, too, her lawyer was saying she doesn't carry the victim complex, because a lot of people are now looking at Elizabeth and her backstory and thinking, okay, what happened here? Where did this come from? Where did you get in this situation? She does have an abusive background with her own family, but isn't like associated with them at all. So it feels like these people took her in, made her a child bride, and had her start popping out kids. And I'm like, so were they trying to get benefits or money out of this? But 16 kids neglected.
Right. Well,
and 7 were hospitalized.
It would be interesting to know if they were claiming, you know, all the benefits for those kids, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, generally as a married couple, that's not a great strategy. That works better as a single mom.
Yeah.
Which is its own problem, leaving that aside. But wow, this is strange. So I don't know. I think we're going to need an update on this one.
Well, there's currently 16 counts the judge has for each of them, but he's going to stack them accordingly, and depending on how he stacks them, I guess, then they're going to their prison length could either be 20 to 120 years, depending on how he wants to stack these charges. So definitely more to come with this story.
Wow, that is some crazy stuff, B.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to be coming back here in just a minute. We have more on the program. Sam Lyman, he is head of research at Bitcoin Policy, previously served as senior advisor and chief speechwriter for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. So you're not going to want to miss him. Before we do that, folks, if you have private student loan debt in the U.S. now totals about $300 billion. $445 billion of that is distressed. Why refi? Refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that other won't touch. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. It's not a debt settlement company. They work with you individually. They don't care what your credit score is, and you can get an interest rate under 6%. Folks, you gotta pay attention to this one and call Why Refi right now, or go online 888-WHY-REFI-85 or rwhyrefi.com. Check them out.
To run a successful business, you need one thing: customers. And how do you get customers? You get them through advertising. You get them through lead generation. But what happens if the leads don't exist, or they don't have valid contact information? This is a familiar story all businesses deal with. Then they call these leads who don't exist, or they're bad numbers, or they're not in their service area. Argus 101 verifies every lead before your team picks up the phone. It's a real person in your area and a neighborhood that matches your ideal customer. Your team only calls people worth calling, thus saving you money. Free trial at argus101.com. That's ARGUS101.com. Help your business expand today. Go to argus101.com. ARGUS101.com. Hello, Breaking Battlegrounds listeners. Did you know that private student loan debt in the United States totals about $300 billion? That's with a B. About $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed, which means people are behind on payments. Why Refi, who is a proud sponsor of our show, refinances this distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They don't even care what your credit score is. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. Refi is not a debt settlement company. They work with each borrower individually to tailor a loan that meets your specific financial situation and helps you pay this loan off. So, folks, if you would like to learn more how to put your mind at ease and your budget back on track, call Refi at 877-400-9989 and tell them Sam and Chuck sent you. You can go and look into them at Refi, YREFY.com to get more information. They will help you reduce your monthly payment and guarantee interest rates under 6%, ensuring financial relief to you as you pay off your private student loan. Jump on that website or call them today.
Dear political candidate, listen up. I'm talking to you. YourName.vote should be the starting point of every campaign. It's memorable, looks great on signs and mailers, helps voters find you online, and gives AI tools a direct path to your campaign website. Why send people to a complicated web address when your name can be the address? Visit name.com today and claim your .vote domain.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now. Our next guest, Sam Lyman, head of research at Bitcoin Policy. He previously served as senior advisor and chief speechwriter to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and has worked as a public policy director at Riot Platforms for Orrin Hatch. So he's got a fantastic policy background in these areas. Sam Lyman, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Sam.
So tell us a little bit about what Bitcoin Policy is, and what is the focus there right now?
Sure. The Bitcoin Policy Institute for years has focused on the goal of securing American compute. That started with Bitcoin. We believe that Bitcoin was a strategic asset which was necessary for the United States to be able to adapt to an emerging monetary network. But from that has branched a lot of interest in artificial intelligence as well. If there's one thing that the Bitcoin Policy Institute knows very well, it's data centers and how they operate and how critical they are to American digital infrastructure in particular. So recently, we've taken a particular look at the foreign influence campaign against the American AI build-out, and we've surfaced some pretty interesting findings there.
And how did Bitcoin Policy first get started? Who came up with the idea and said, "Hey, we really need to look at this as a strategic asset, or at least a strategic consideration for the United States"?
Yeah, it was our founders, David Zell and Grant McCarty. They had the vision of recognizing that Bitcoin is here to stay. And they took that position. It was very counter consensus at the time. This was several years ago when a lot of people dismissed Bitcoin, didn't think it would survive, didn't think it would work. But their thesis has been proven correct over time. So David and Grant recognized that Bitcoin is the fastest growing monetary network in the world. And nation states themselves have a simple choice to make. Do they want to be a part of that emerging monetary network, or do they want to sit from the outside looking in? They recognize that because this is a digital asset that is growing so quickly, that is becoming more and more integrated into the economy, it's important that the United States leads on that frontier.
Is there a concern? I obviously, there's been a lot of talk about central bank digital currencies and national banks stepping up to take on some of the role of Bitcoin. Is that something that you think makes sense? Or I've always sort of come at it from the approach that it actually would make sense to have this as a universal monetary system that everyone is working within.
Yeah, we agree. So Bitcoin stands as the anti-central bank digital currency. It's a form of money that anyone, regardless of color, class, or creed, can opt into this monetary network. And the beauty of Bitcoin is you don't need permission to use it. So we believe that because of that, Bitcoin itself is American values distilled into its purest form. We believe that it's kind of an ideal form of money for Americans to use precisely because it doesn't require that permission. And so I think a lot of institutions have recognized that Bitcoin has staying power, that it's something that more and more people adopt, especially as the dollar becomes more inflated. And as a result, people are opting for Bitcoin because it acts as a counterbalance to a lot of the inflation we see in our day-to-day.
It's an important point, right? Because we've had a lot of volatility in inflation in the world markets in the last couple of years. And there's a lot of volatility historically in Bitcoin, but that seems to be cryptocurrency seems to be settling into a more predictable financial path. Am I mistaken in that?
I think that's a fair assessment, at least for Bitcoin itself. A lot of people pay attention to the short-term volatility of Bitcoin. And that volatility cuts both ways. Sometimes it can be volatility to the upside, where Bitcoin appreciates very quickly in value. Other times it can be, as we well know, volatility to the downside, where it loses value quickly. What people don't recognize, though, is that the long-term value appreciation of Bitcoin can be described in just a few words, up and to the right. Since it came into being, Bitcoin has increased faster than any asset on the market today. And people who are willing to use Bitcoin to save for the long term instead of just use it for the short term, over a 4-year time period, they always find themselves on the better side of things.
And importantly, this is a currency that Bitcoin has the ability to operate without needing. I mean, this is kind of, I'm struggling to phrase this point, but Bitcoin's transparency limits the need for regulatory interference.
I could see an argument to be made for that. The beauty of Bitcoin is that it's a money that requires no middleman. So when we use bank payments today, whether it's Venmo or Zelle or anything else, we'll pay money over our phones, but there's always a middleman who takes something off the top. The beauty of Bitcoin, though, is that you don't need that permission to use it. And there is some transparency there into who is using Bitcoin and how they're using it. But that's also one of the benefits of the network itself, is that there's a transparency, but at the same time, people can be pseudonymous when they pay with Bitcoin, and they don't need to go through a bank in order to use it.
Well, and with all the debanking issues over the last few years, we've seen how important that may be. We're going to be coming back with more from Sam Lyman in just a moment. I want to get into, Sam, you've been doing some really great research onto this frankly, foreign interference in AI, in data centers, what's going on. I've been shocked at the turn that has been taken against them. So I want to get into all that when we come back. Breaking Battlegrounds, be right back. Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now with Sam Lyman, head of research at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. Before we went to break, we're talking a little bit about the value of Bitcoin institutionally to this country and frankly to the world. But Sam, Bitcoin Policy Institute has been doing some research that caught our attention. That's why we brought you on the program. We want to get into what's going on with AI data centers. What have you guys been finding out?
we've been finding out that there is a lot of authentic opposition to data centers across the country, and that's not to be denied. A lot of people are concerned about the impacts that data centers will have on their electricity bills, the impacts that data centers will have on water consumption in the county. And those concerns are in large part organic and need to be heard and need to be resolved in those communities. That being said, we've also discovered that alongside those organic opposition campaigns to data centers, there's a significant inorganic campaign that's actually being fomented by foreign actors abroad. And so there are a few different strains of that foreign influence that we can dig into today.
Well, and before we get into that, I think this is an important distinction you just made, because you're talking about the organic resistance that may be out there in communities. And a lot of that I've found is a little bit misinformed. So, for instance, here in Arizona, you have a lot of people who are saying, well, we don't have the water. We have energy because we have Palo Verde nuclear power plant, but water. But if you're in the Phoenix or Tucson active management areas, 100% of the water in our system is recycled. So is that a water impact? It's very minimal. It's certainly far less than a lot of other uses of similar scale. And likewise, energy prices in other areas, you can adapt by building more power, by increasing transmission capacity, microplants, all sorts of things. I'm saying all this just to point out that the difference is that with this organic resistance to data centers, which is legitimate, there are answers to those objections, right?
Yeah, that's really well said, Sam. And an important point to hit on there is that data centers themselves are almost a misnomer. Data centers are supercomputers. And if you were to talk about the energy usage and the performance of a MacBook or a desktop computer from 15 years ago, it'd be dramatically different than the performance of a desktop computer today. And I think that's what people don't recognize in this conversation about data centers is a lot of the data points out there about water usage and electricity consumption are accurate for data centers that were built over a decade ago, but not the data centers today. And Sam, you hit on an especially important point about water usage. The overwhelming majority of data centers being built today have what's called closed loop recycling, meaning that they use water on the front end, but that water they will recycle in a closed loop system throughout the majority of the lifetime of that data center. So the water consumption in particular has been overestimated by a factor of 1,000x in a lot of newspapers and in a lot of social media campaigns against them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of misinformation out there.
No, that's a really important point because, and I brought this up here locally as well. The fact of the matter is that, yes, they're recycling. So what they're really losing, there's a very small amount of water loss in that system, tiny, and then they flush their toilets and run their sinks like every other business. I mean, that's really it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's grossly overstated, the water consumption aspect of things, especially with these newer data centers being built right now.
And there are even now technologies for air cooling some of these data centers. So there are answers to the organic resistance. But when you're dealing with these foreign network operations, there's no legitimate answer to that, right? This is what makes them so difficult to deal with and why they have to be confronted directly, in my mind.
Exactly. The foreign actors don't care about the facts at all. They say
Right.
that a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth has an opportunity to put its pants on. And we're seeing that take place right now with the data center debate. And a lot of the lies, a lot of the falsehoods are being propagated by foreign actors and interests that don't have America's best interest in mind. So let's dig into the biggest vector of foreign influence. That's China itself. So in our research, we were able to document that over several years, China propaganda outlets that publish in English have been targeting the data center build out here in the United States. They've been fear-mongering about water consumption and electricity usage, saying that data centers would spike Americans' electricity bills. And mind you, these are publications that are directly funded and overseen by the Chinese Communist Party, but they message to American audiences. What was most disturbing in our research was finding that there's actually an entire American nonprofit network here in the United States that has been taking that CCP propaganda, parroting that propaganda, and then amplifying it to even larger audiences. And the biggest network that's doing this is funded by a man named Neville Singham. Who is Neville Singham? He is effectively a modern day Lenin. He's an American citizen who fled to China back in 2017 after selling his technology company for hundreds of millions of dollars. Since going to China, he has pumped almost $300 million into the U.S. nonprofit ecosystem. And the purpose and objective of these nonprofits is to undermine what they call American imperialism. In their view, American imperialism is American business interests, American technology interests, and American military as well. And so what they've been doing, especially with data centers, is they've been amplifying that propaganda, and they've been working through a political organization called the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And the PSL, that's its acronym, has had an outsized impact in the data center build-out campaign, the campaign against it across the country.
And look, obviously they're having an effect, and people like yourself are trying to push back on that. They have a lot of money behind this, right? I mean, as you said, they put hundreds of millions into this. For China, there's almost no spend in terms of publicity that isn't worth it if they can use this to achieve digital dominance in the future, right?
Exactly. The return on investment for both China and for Neville Singham, who's appears to be working for China, is enormous. So China's objective in all of this is to turn Americans against artificial intelligence. And that's the bigger picture that I think a lot of people don't recognize in the data center debate, is that China has a very strong interest in undermining the data center build out. Why is that? It's because China has expressed, going all the way back to 2018, that its intent is to win the artificial intelligence race. Xi Jinping even said in an address before policymakers there in Beijing that if China can win the AI race, then they can also lead in technology and scientific research. So it's very strategic on behalf of the CCP. What they're looking to do now is not only slow the data center build out, and they've effectively been able to do that, but they also want to turn American public opinion against artificial intelligence in general, because if you can turn Americans against AI, then you have a leg up in the AI race, because over in China, the data shows very clearly that the majority of Chinese people have a very strong and favorable opinion of artificial intelligence. And that contrasts with the public opinion of a lot of people here in the United States.
Well, and obviously that public opinion is being sculpted by China. But I want to just touch on a couple of the objections I've seen out there. And you know, one thing that's been disappointing, I of course expected the traditional green movement to jump on this, because it's really just an outgrowth of their anti-growth, degrowth agenda. But we've seen a lot of conservatives be brought into this bandwagon by the propaganda out there. We've seen a lot of independents and independently minded people be brought in by this propaganda. And I want to touch on a couple of key points I've seen. And you know, I know there's easy counters to this, but first, people are saying, hey, I don't want these data centers. I don't want AI because it's a government spy tool. My answer, tell me if I'm wrong, is you get a choice not between the U.S. having these things or no one having them, but between the U.S. having them and having them regulated and controlled and your government be restrained, or having them operated out of China with no restraint.
Exactly. I think you distilled that perfectly, Sam. It's not a choice between AI or no AI. It's a choice between American AI or Chinese AI. And we know for a fact that Chinese AI is severely censored by the Chinese Communist Party. If you were to use a Chinese AI model today and ask it what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989, it wouldn't be able to tell you, because those models are trained not to relay any negative information about the Chinese Communist Party. So that's concern number one. Now, concern number two about the surveillance, I hear that concern, and it really resonates with me as well. I think the status quo that we have right now in the United States, where you effectively have a duopoly of AI companies that are able to access a lot of our personal information, is not a sustainable status quo. We need something better, and that something better is what's called open source AI. Open source AI is to artificial intelligence what Bitcoin is to money. What I mean by that is that open source AI allows you to access an AI model, but if you run that model locally, in other words, using your own compute, you don't have to divulge any of your information to anybody. We believe at the Bitcoin Policy Institute that should be the future of artificial intelligence in America, open source AI, because that's an AI model that is private and that lets you run your own model as you see fit without any censorship and without having to divulge any of your private information over to another entity, much less a government.
Are there AI models that are moving in that direction or are open source now?
Yeah, there's actually several open source models out there right now. There's one called built by a company called Thinking Machines that people could download today, where they can run the AI model completely on their computers without sending any information to a private company. So that's a big advantage as well. We know that Google's also looking at this. NVIDIA recently came out in support of this open source AI model, as did Microsoft and some other companies. So there's a lot of support that's growing even more for this open source AI.
And Jensen Huang from NVIDIA coming out for that's a big deal within the tech industry, right? Because you're talking about someone whose technology is essential for all these AI models.
Yeah, exactly. NVIDIA chips are the substrate of the AI economy. So to have Jensen Huang come out in support of open source AI, or as we like to say, American AI, that is a real sea change within the industry, where I think you're going to see more investment and more policy that caters towards that open source AI model.
Before we let you go, we got just a couple of minutes left here. How do we start pushing back against the Neville Singhams and these outside networks? Because you've laid it out, but maybe people don't understand. Folks, this is entirely a question now of whether the future is a Western American future or a Chinese future. In a Chinese future, every American ought to be a little bit terrified at.
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the best ways to push back is merely transparency. We want transparency in the data center build out, where when Americans go to a data center hearing, it's important to ask who is funding the opposition. Again, there's a lot of authentic opposition to these data center movements, but if you see anyone in red t-shirts in particular, that's the t-shirt most typically of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is the political vehicle of Neville Singham. They've effectively been able to stop $24 billion in AI investment here in the United States. So it's important to look at the person next to you and make sure that their interests are legitimate, that their interests are authentic, just as yours are if you're opposing data centers. And I think the other thing to push back against a lot of the build out is to help community members recognize that they have all the leverage in these debates. If they are opposed to building a data center, then it's worth asking, what can we do to get a community to say yes about building a data center? Mm-hmm. We've seen in a lot of communities, including in Louisiana, for example, that data centers were able to pay for raises for all the teachers in the county. And some of those raises were up to $50,000. We've also seen towns where data centers have effectively paid all the property taxes for the town. So it's able to zero out property taxes that community members were paying. We've also seen data centers that were able to help rebuild roads and schools, and in some cases double the county budget. So community members have the opportunity, if they want to build a data center where they live, to really leverage that data center to better the communities and neighborhoods that they're living in, and to build a better future for their kids.
Way for people to get a little piece of the AI pie for themselves. I love it. Sam Lyman, how do people follow you and your work and the work at the Bitcoin Policy Institute?
Yeah, I would invite them to visit our website. It's btcpolicy.org, and they can follow our work too on X. My account is @SamLyman33.
Fantastic, Sam Lyman. We would love to have you back on the program again in the future. I think this is going to be a hot topic for a long time to come here, and it's obviously a critical one for our future. Folks, if you're not already, make sure you go online, go to your favorite podcast site, download, subscribe to Breaking Battlegrounds, because we have tons of great content coming up for you. If you're on there, give us that 5-star review also. It really helps us expand. Share it with a friend. Those little things keep us on the air here and make a huge difference. But we have great guests. I mean, that's the point, is if you're not on the podcast, you're not going to get Gary Gigi's economic insights. Those are coming up here. And we also have Shandi Hudson, who is an expert in senior transitions. So really critical stuff. Stay tuned. Breaking Battlegrounds will be back over the air next week.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's future at jase.com.
Dear political candidate, listen up. I'm talking to you. Having an exact match domain like yourname.vote isn't a luxury, it's campaign basics. It's easy to print on yard signs and mailers, easy for voters to remember, helps people find you directly, and gives AI tools like ChatGPT a clear source for campaign information. So why settle for a long patchwork website address when you can own your actual name with a .vote domain? Visit name.com today and claim your personalized .vote website address.
Hello, Breaking Battlegrounds listeners. Did you know that private student loan debt in the United States totals about $300 billion? That's with a B. About $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed, which means people are behind on payments. Why Refi, who is a proud sponsor of our show, refinances this distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They don't even care what your credit score is. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. Refi is not a debt settlement company. They work with each borrower individually to tailor a loan that meets your specific financial situation and helps you pay this loan off. So, folks, if you would like to learn more how to put your mind at ease and your budget back on track, call Refi at 877-400-9989 and tell them Sam and Chuck sent you. You can go and look into them at Refi, YREFY.com to get more information. They will help you reduce your monthly payment and guarantee interest rates under 6%, ensuring financial relief to you as you pay off your private student loan. Jump on that website or call them today.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. As we continue on with the podcast here now, our next guest up is talking about something that, frankly, will affect just about everybody in the country at some point in their lives. It is something I've dealt with a little bit when I was working with the city of Phoenix, which is, what do you do when your parents or your grandparents or your loved ones start aging to the point where you can't stay at home anymore, where it becomes physically, mentally impossible to continue that lifestyle, and you have to start looking at making the transition to some different type of senior living. And so Shandi Hudson brings a unique perspective to senior placement. She combines her background as a top-performing realtor with senior care advocacy, and it gives her that advantage. Really, we were talking right before we got on air here, senior living is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in a lot of communities, right? We need to have facilities in the right places. They need access to all the services, medical services, all the shopping and everything else, right? You want to keep your seniors engaged. You want to keep your family engaged. You want to keep them next to you. So this is really important stuff with an aging population. So Shandi Hudson, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us first, how did you get involved in senior care advocacy?
I'll make a long story short. So in real estate for over 20 years, and I have a wonderful real estate attorney that I've worked with forever, and he had a client that was a senior placement agent, which I'd never heard of until he brought that to my attention. And he was one of those people, when you have a person, a contact that says you need to meet somebody, you meet them. Mm-hmm. So I met with her. We sat down.
Well, and for folks who don't know, what is a senior placement agent?
Great question.
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. So basically, I would say it's similar to a real estate agent, but the specialty is senior care and seniors only. So basically, when I met with this woman, she does the same thing I do, except she does it for seniors. So it's all about finding seniors the right care, the right homes, the right whatever resources that you need.
That expertise is really critical to making a successful transition, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if someone is trying to sell a senior or their family on a facility and it's not the right fit, you're going to have a lot of problems.
Absolutely. I'm currently dealing with that situation today, as is. They found the place online. They, all the bells and whistles. But I know just from having boots on the ground, that this is a community that has some problems, has some situations with APS. So I'm there to inform them that you got to look past, what you see when you go into the communities, right?
And so for people who are outside Arizona, APS, you're talking Arizona
yes,
Public Service, the electric
yes.
utility here, right? Yeah.
Adult Protective Services.
Oh, Adult Protectives. Yes. Okay, see, I'm off. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're cutting off the power. They're getting
Adult
overheated.
Protective Services. So yes.
Okay. And that's actually becoming a bigger thing too, right? Like everyone's familiar with Child Protective Services.
Yes.
But there is a lot of predation on seniors. And so Adult Protective Services is necessary, but so are people like yourself who are doing this thing about trying to find the right circumstance.
Absolutely.
So that led you to create Elite Senior AZ, right?
I am
Elite
Senior
Managing
Services.
Partner.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
There's a wonderful lady by the name of Jackie Ruiz owns it. I am managing partner there, but yes, I've been there for 4 years now, I believe. Yeah.
And so since doing that, let me start out. Tell us a little bit about it. You've told us obviously the kind of work to do, but who typically comes to you for help? Like how does that process start?
That's a great question. So typically, you would think it would be the seniors themselves, but it's actually the adult children of seniors. We're kind of in a sandwich generation. So a lot of my clientele are people who have mom and dad who are aging but still have kids at home, or still working a full-time job, and so they call, hey, I have to be at work, I got to get my kids to soccer, but I need to get mom and dad in a safe place. I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do. And so that's typically the call that I get, and it's typically on the back foot. Mom, they've fallen, they've left the stove on, fire department's been called. It's typically an emergency, unfortunately, when I get called in, but that's typically where the calls come from.
So that's an important point. So when you get to that point where it's an emergency, when there's a fall, when there is a fire, there's some other dire circumstance that leads to this transition, that makes for a much more difficult transition than with proper planning, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So when should a family start having the conversation with someone like yourself, with their, with their parents, with their grandparents, whoever it might be? When should they start having that conversation?
It's such a wonderful question. The sooner the better. So when you start noticing changes, you start seeing things slip, some cognitive things, safety concerns. It's I understand it's a prideful generation. Obviously, they want to stay in their homes as long as possible, which we want to help do as well. So we're also a resource for that, because we're not just like, hey, let's move them out and put them somewhere.
There are ways to support them staying in their home.
Let's try to do that, but let's not wait till it's an emergency, because also then that gives the senior the autonomy to help with the decision themselves, and then they're not taking out of that, because that's the hard part too.
Well, and even with dementia, so I went through this. My father passed a couple of years ago, but the last few years he got into having some dementia issues. And the difficulty is that if they're not part of that decision-making process before you get to that point, that they can never be bought in.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and we want to make sure we're respecting their wishes. So the more they can be involved, the better. So I always tell people, I got a call the other day and they're like, we hope it's not too soon. Absolutely. It's never too soon. It's always better if we can get ahead of it.
You'd be perfectly happy if a client came to you 10 years before they needed your service, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because also we never know when things are going to change. Things can change on a dime. So sometimes I have people that are like, oh, I'm a year out, I'm a couple years out. I might get a call 2 months later. Something happened. You just never know. So being prepared is so important.
So walk us through the different options, because you alluded to being able to stay in the home. There's a lot of different senior living options out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, our objective is to respect the senior's wishes. If they want to stay at home, we want to make sure we can help them do that safely. So is that home health? Is that somebody, a lot of our seniors are lonely. Is that a companion coming in to be with them? Then conversely, if they can't stay in their home, there are other options. Is it a senior living community? Is it a group home? Is it a skilled nursing rehab facility? There are plenty of options, and what our goal is to come in and meet the need of what it is, right? So financially, location-wise, again, if it's a senior that's social, are they going to be in the right environment? We factor in all of those things when we meet with the family or with the senior themselves, because really, again, we want to make sure that their happiness and their autonomy is up front and first.
And for people who are concerned about the costs, there are supports out there, right? There are programs that can help assist, and there are ways to navigate that.
There are. And again, the sooner we get ahead of that, the more, because finance is an issue. We have what we call a silver tsunami right now.
Right.
I
mean, that was one of the issues I dealt with at the Phoenix City Council is we realized very quickly, and we're talking with a lot of senior living facilities, they needed to build a lot of new beds, right? Doors, beds, however you want to phrase it. We always called it doors at the city. But you need to build a lot of doors.
Yeah.
And you need to do it very quickly. And that means you need your local government to be on board with making that possible, with not making the zoning, planning, and permitting process impossible. But likewise, that requires people in the community understanding the need for this and having the acceptance of bringing these things in, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, which is why I've been out just doing as much education as I can and meeting with as many people as I can and being active in the community, because people are starting to see we need help. We really do.
And they're realistically, this is something, just looking at the makeup of the economy in the country, we're going to have to make some adaptations to some of our senior programs at the federal level, at the state level, for how we address this, because you have so many people you have this tidal wave, right, of people who are aging out of daily work and into senior living situations. That's a big wave that's just starting to hit. Mm-hmm. What happens when it hits, when we have hundreds of thousands more people in the next few years that need these services?
Well, I'm going to be honest, we're not prepared. We're not prepared. We don't have enough. We don't have enough doors, right? We also don't have, the programs aren't there. We have one program, which is called, in our state, Arizona Long-Term Care Services, also referred to as Altex. We see more and more people that are in need of that, but they have to qualify financially and medically, and we're finding a lot of people just aren't qualifying anymore. And so there does need to be a shift because we're going to be overwhelmed, to be honest.
So what questions should families ask if you're looking at a facility? Mm-hmm. What are the mistakes that those adult children are making, and what questions should they be asking when they're touring or talking to someone like yourself?
So, again, I'm in a current situation where the families, they're impressed by what they saw when they walked in, because it's a beautiful community, right? Looks wonderful, right? But
the floors are shiny, the walls
the chandeliers are beautiful,
yeah,
right? But they're having a staffing shortage. So what's the caregiver ratio? What does the nursing staff look like? Talk about the nutrition. Are they fully staffed? What does the family plan look like? How often are they in contact with the family? What happens when there's an emergency? How quickly do they contact the family? The families need to make sure that they're involved with not just the executive director that comes out to sell them the beautiful, shiny place that they're going, but meet with the people behind the scenes that are actually going to be caring for your loved one.
And are facilities generally willing to make those folks available for people to sit down with and talk to?
Absolutely. And I think that's where I come in, because a lot of the times when families go in, they're just overwhelmed. All they know is that they have to get their loved one in someplace, and they're stressed, and again, have to go back to work, kids, whatever's happening. And so they don't know to ask the right questions. So having an advocate with them that can ask these questions, the kids, again, they're in an emotional state, trying to make a decision, a rational decision for their loved ones. So having an advocate with you is important.
Well, and if you had a facility, let's say a client of yours was interested in placing a parent or loved one in that facility, and the facility said, you said, hey, I'd like to meet with the head of the food services or nutrition services. I'd like to meet with the head of nursing services, so forth. If they said no, that's a pretty big red flag at that point, right?
Absolutely.
How do you handle situations? Because we dealt with this with my dad, where he's a very independent man. And that's a really big life transition for people who these are independent. Boomers are a very independent generation. Gen X coming up behind, very independent generation. I know that however many years from now that may be, I will be a miserable SOB to transition to these facilities. How do you start having those conversations with them? How do you work through that with the parent, with the senior.
I get it. I'm Generation X too. And I know even I'm in the business and I'm going to be terrible. But honestly, the best way that I've seen this is it sounds impossible, but having a third party come in. Boomers do not want to talk to their children about this. They don't want to talk to their children about their finances. They don't want their children to know about their physical health.
That's a really good. I hadn't heard that from anybody, but boy, does that make sense.
They do not. So they will let somebody like me come in, who's a neutral third party, come in. I can, obviously we come in and disarm the situation. But again, they just don't want their children to know what's going on behind the curtain. And half of the time it happens when that person is now incapacitated and then the children are on the back foot finding out everything that they should have known up front. But it's challenging.
Is this something, this strikes me, our next guest in a regular guest on this program is Gary Gigi with Gigi Capital. He works obviously on a lot of retirement plans and that kind of thing. Is this something people like him need to be having these conversations earlier with these folks?
Yes. And going back to education, I'm spending a lot of my time with people like that. So our, fiduciaries, wealth advisors, financial planners, because what we're also finding is that people are just unprepared. And even if they do have the finances, they haven't allotted for what this is going to look like. And a lot of the times the people that are helping them with that oftentimes don't know.
And so before we wrap up here, if there's someone out there listening right now, they're overwhelmed trying to find care for their parent, what's the first step they should take right now?
In their area, find a placement agent. There is an organization called Passers, also NPRA, which gives a list of people who are in that organization. It's a trade organization that is dedicated to advocacy for seniors and higher standards in senior care. So find an advocate to come help you through the process because you don't have to do it alone.
It would have been very valuable, I think, for our family to have someone like you involved in that process through that time. What do you wish more families knew before they're in the middle of the kind of crisis, the situations you've been talking about?
Just to piggyback on your last question, I wish they knew that there was help and that they don't, because you're stuck. Google's not always the right answer. Now we got AI and trying to help find a place.
Right.
Using AI also isn't the best either. So there is help out there.
Shandi, before we let you go, how do folks get in touch with you? If they need someone right now who can help guide them, they're in Arizona, how do they get in touch with you? Maybe if they're out of state, they can still get in touch with you and kind of go from there.
We do help people statewide too.
Okay,
so
great.
Yes, yeah, they can reach me on our website at elitesenioraz.com. Also, my cell phone is always on 24/7, and that is 916-549-9000.
Fantastic. Shandi Hudson, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, this is an important topic. Having gone through this and having seen how difficult it is for a family and for the senior to go through this transition, having proper planning ahead of time. We didn't, and it made things tougher. And so if you can reach out to someone like Shandi and you go on that website and, elitesenioraz.com, go there, connect with them. It's going to make that easier. And let me tell you from personal experience, you're going to need help. This is one of those cases, Shandi, where you got to admit you need help.
Yes, absolutely. That's the first step.
Always. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate having you on the program.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our final segment up today, Gary Gigi is the president and CEO of Gigi Capital. He is a frequent guest on this program. You can find him on X at Gary Gigi, that's GYGI, or at gigicapital.com, GYGIcapital.com. Gary, good to have you back on the program. Some big news yesterday with the Fed holding rates steady, yes. But you did have some official dissent. So tell us what you make of that.
I think there is a battle going on within the Fed led by former chair Jay Powell. And the current chair, Kevin Warsh, he wants to change how the Fed thinks about inflation. He wants them to rethink how they communicate with the public. So in the past, the last three Fed presidents chairman would talk regularly about what they thought the economy was doing. It's called guidance,
Mm-hmm.
and they would um, give too much information, in my opinion, that created more volatility. Kevin Warsh, I think, is really a fresh drink of water here, where he's saying more information is not better. The market is best at figuring these things out itself. It's not, the market doesn't work best when the government is intervening every time that there's some inconsistency. So this battle is taking place within the Fed. Three of the members voted to raise interest rates yesterday. Um, Jay Powell, former chair, is not a voting member, but three of the members did. The rest of them did not. So this just tells me that some of them are siding with Chair Powell. The rest of them seem to be on the side of Kevin Warsh about keeping rates steady. Because if you look at what he said, since I've been the chair, we haven't raised interest rates, but interest rates on their own through the market has gone up. So the market has accomplished what the Fed in the past would have done by raising interest rates. So he's saying, I don't need to raise interest rates. The market's handling it itself. And I love that. People that have been following the financial markets like I have, they love that when they defer to the market and say, the market is going to figure out what is best and move there. And it did.
Well, and it strikes me that, I mean, personally, I really like what Warsh is saying there. And I like what he's doing in terms of saying, and I'm curious to your take, one of the complaints I get from business people all the time about government is it's not predictable enough. You keep changing the conditions on us.
Yes.
Having a slower, steadier hand makes a lot of sense long term for the economy, in my view. Am I wrong?
No, I totally agree, because given the opportunity, the market will make the right decisions. I'm convinced of that. And so if you leave the market to move interest rates higher, if interest rates need to move higher, it will. If interest rates are too tight, meaning the Fed has not lowered interest rates and the market wants them lower, the market will move them lower.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times when the Fed will have to intervene and lower interest rates because um, the Fed has two mandates. One of them is full employment. The other one is interest rates. And if one of them needs to be massaged, if you will, then the Fed will do that. But I think a lot of us that are in the financial markets love that Warsh and most of the Fed is letting the market figure out where interest rates should be. And that's the way it was in the past, and we need to go back to that.
It seems like while people could criticize a lot of Donald Trump's appointees, when it comes to Treasury with Scott Bessent and it comes to Kevin Warsh at the Fed,
yeah,
those are about as good as you could possibly get.
Oh, they are the best, and certainly the best in my lifetime. And so I think Scott Bessent will go down as perhaps one of the best Treasury secretaries in the history of our country. He's that good. And Kevin Warsh, I mean, it's new, but he's saying the right things. He's doing the right things. We need to get out of this last close to 20 years when the Federal Reserve was controlling interest rates and the economy. And so Warsh is of the opinion that the Fed is to nudge things along. They're not supposed to create policy. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Sam. These two guys are awesome.
It's fantastic to see after, frankly, some unfortunate decisions have been made, I thought, there in the past. Before we let you go, Gary, I want to talk about what Trump's latest tariffs mean.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's an area that's been volatile, that's been unpredictable, and that, I think, has hampered the economy a little bit, that unpredictability. But what does this round mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think to a great extent, the massive amount of inflation which was feared has not manifested itself. However, the inflation has come up recently because of oil, the price of oil going up, not because of tariffs. That's not to say that there are not certain industries that are directly affected by tariffs, because there are. And so when the administration takes a look at inflation, they took a look at inflation across the board. not just one industry. They take a look at, okay, how is inflation affecting? Because if something has moved up, like say oil, but a lot of things have moved down and they even themselves out, that's fine, and they're okay with that. And so I think that's what's going on. The American people and businesses seem to have adjusted themselves and their lives to the fact that tariffs are here, and it may disrupt things from time to time, but they have adjusted, and maybe that's a good thing, because I'm not sure that the real purpose of Trump's tariffs are to bring in revenue, even though that can happen, and he touts that a lot. I think it's his way of negotiating with other countries to get them to do what he wants them to do.
Which I think is a very valid. I know there's been a lot of criticism, but I think that's a very valid thing for him to do, because sort of the history of a lot of those type of international negotiations has been these countries will agree and give lip service to things, but they won't actually change their practices. They'll continue to put non-tariff trade barriers in the way of U.S. goods. They'll continue to ignore trade deals. You got to use the levers that you have, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that one thing Trump, I think, has been spot on is he has really talked about how past presidents and administrations have made poor trading deals, and he's right. And so those foreign countries that the trade deals were made with took advantage of American workers, took advantage of the kindness of our country, and it's been that way for a long time. And I think he's trying to right that ship. And if he's successful in doing that, because it's not done yet, but if he's successful in doing that, that's a good thing.
Yeah, long term, it would make an enormous difference. Gary, before we let you go, how do folks get in touch with you and take advantage of the fantastic financial knowledge and advice you provide?
Yeah, I appreciate those kind words. They can get in touch with us a couple of ways. One of them is through our website, which is gigicapital.com. That's GYGI capital.com. But they can also call us at 801-787-0342. That's 801-787-0342.
Gary, always a pleasure having you on the program. We'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Have a good weekend, guys. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Folks, as always, we are very, very grateful for everyone who's been listening in. And obviously, if you're hearing this, you're downloading our podcast already. But do us a favor, give it a 5-star review. Give it that little bit of extra love. And if you're feeling unbelievably generous, share it with a friend. Just put the link in an email and shoot it to him, or text or whatever. I'm probably email. I just dated myself as a Gen Xer who's probably going to have to go into a retirement home at some point soon. So I am going to need the advice of our good friend Shandi on that one. But in the meantime, folks, we hope you stay tuned into this program. B is laughing at me for being, old farting our way off the air right here. But it is what it is.
You're still young.
Any last words, B?
Leave us a 5-star review before Sam kicks the bucket.
Don't have 16 children and keep them in a 12 by 12 space.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
Let's stick to humanity.
Let's be humane here. Let's treat our children better than cattle.
Honestly, I wouldn't put 16 cats in a 12 by 12 space.
Right? I wouldn't
that's cruel.
I wouldn't even want to stand in a room with 16 people. No offense to people, but I get a little claustrophobic.
I'm fine with it if it's like a gym.
Yeah, if it's a gym and it's not a 12 by 12. But
yeah. All right. Folks, thank you once again. We very much appreciate you. Breaking Battlegrounds will be back next week.